You probably think your morning scroll is just a harmless way to wake up your tired and foggy brain today. However, neuroscience suggests this single choice creates a catastrophic ripple effect throughout your entire cognitive architecture and future success. There is a hidden psychological mechanism currently draining your potential that you likely do not even realize is operating right now. Imagine you are the driver of a trolley car hurtling toward 5 important goals while your brakes no longer function correctly. You feel desperate because you know that if you crash into these 5 workers, your dreams will all surely die today. Take a moment to feel the subtle tension currently sitting in your neck and shoulders as you process these difficult words. Evolutionary biology suggests our ancestors developed these specific avoidance patterns to keep us safe from the literal lions on the savannah. In the modern digital age, these once helpful survival instincts have transformed into a cage that restricts your personal growth and happiness. When you choose the path of least resistance, your brain releases a small puff of dopamine to reward your stay in safety. This neurochemical loop appears to reinforce the very habits that are secretly eroding your sense of self-worth and long-term ambition. Meet the perfectionist procrastinator, who waits for the perfect moment while their potential slowly turns into a pile of bitter ash. Observe the reckless sprinter who burns out in 15 minutes because they lack a sustainable moral and psychological framework for action. If you do not address this invisible decay, your ability to focus will continue to leak like a bucket full of holes. One small lapse in your discipline today tends to lead to a total liquidation of your future self-identity and purpose. This internal conflict creates a state of cognitive dissonance, where your actions no longer align with the person you wish to be. Eventually, this mental stagnation will begin to drain your bank account and poison the quality of your most precious personal relationships. You are essentially sacrificing your future self for the fleeting comfort of a present moment that you will soon entirely forget. This is not just about one bad day, but rather the systemic collapse of your entire potential and the tragedy of life. Monitor your internal signals for the specific feeling of restlessness that indicates you are currently trapped in a cycle of denial. We must now examine the biological reality of why your mind feels more comfortable with failure than it does with true success. You are currently steering your life toward an outcome that appears to be determined by your most basic biological urges. Your brain often struggles to choose between the immediate results of an action and the intrinsic quality of the act itself. Neuroscience suggests that your prefrontal cortex calculates the cold numbers while your amygdala screams in terror at the direct conflict. Think back to the moment you chose to stay silent instead of speaking up for your own professional or personal worth. This hesitation acts like a weight around your ankles as you try to swim toward the distant shore of your potential. Notice the way your heart rate slightly increases when you consider the cost of your continued and silent inaction today. You might feel that certain actions are categorically wrong even if they lead to a much better result for everyone involved. This moral gridlock appears to be the primary reason you are stuck in a loop of planning without ever taking action. The perfectionist procrastinator often uses moral superiority as a shield to avoid the messy and necessary work of real-world change. If you continue to wait for a clean and perfect solution, you will likely find yourself standing still as time disappears. Imagine standing on a bridge overlooking the tracks of your life, while a heavy and difficult decision looms directly over you. Pushing the fat man off the bridge feels fundamentally different than simply turning a steering wheel to save 5 other lives. Your brain appears to distinguish between a secondary consequence and a primary act of direct and intentional physical or mental violence. This psychological distinction often prevents you from making the one hard choice that would finally solve 50 of your smaller problems. You are currently letting 5 areas of your life die because you are too afraid to sacrifice one comfortable and familiar habit. The cost of this fear is the slow erosion of your ability to trust yourself in high-pressure and high-stakes situations. Every time you choose the status quo over the necessary sacrifice, your internal sense of authority begins to wither and fade. This mechanism explains why you feel like an onlooker in your own story instead of the actual director of your destiny. There is a much darker version of this dilemma waiting for you in the emergency room of your own future health. We must now confront the terrifying possibility that your mind is willing to sacrifice everything just to keep the peace tonight. Imagine you are a doctor in an emergency room with 6 patients who have been in a terrible accident today. 5 people have moderate injuries while the 6th person is severely injured and requires your total attention to survive the night. Choosing the one patient over the 5 feels like a noble sacrifice until you calculate the total loss of human life. Feel the weight of this impossible choice sitting like a cold stone in the very center of your stomach right now. This medical hypothetical reveals how your mind tends to prioritize the immediate crisis while ignoring the systemic collapse of your future. Jeremy Bentham suggests that the only moral path appears to be maximizing the total balance of pleasure over human pain today. Utilitarianism acts as a cold mathematical formula designed to strip away the messy emotions that often cloud your daily executive judgment. However, this logical framework carries a dangerous hidden price that might eventually require you to harvest your own identity for others. Suppose you are a surgeon who needs 5 different organs to save 5 patients who are currently at the door of death. A healthy traveler is sleeping in the next room, and their organs could potentially save all 5 of your dying patients. Your logical mind screams for the survival of the many, while your biological instinct recoils in pure and absolute horror today. The reckless sprinter would cut the corner to win the race without realizing they are destroying the track they must finish. Your moral compass is like a magnetic needle spinning wildly in a room filled with heavy and conflicting electronic signals right now. Research suggests that your brain appears to prioritize local empathy over the abstract calculations of global utility and total collective happiness. When you fail to resolve this internal tension, you tend to drift into a state of chronic indecision and mental exhaustion. This indecision is currently sabotaging your career progress and leaving your most ambitious goals to rot in a dark corner today. We must look deeper into the stories of real people who were forced to live out these impossible choices in reality. History provides us with the case of the Mignonette, where 4 men were lost at sea with no food or fresh water. Their desperation led to a choice that challenges every categorical moral principle you believe defines your own human character and soul. You are about to discover if your own morality is a solid foundation, or merely a convenient lie you tell yourself. There were 4 men on the yacht Mignonette, including a young 17-year-old orphan named Richard Parker today. When their ship went down, they found themselves trapped in a tiny lifeboat with only 2 cans of turnips. Psychology suggests that extreme hunger eventually strips away the thin layer of civilization that governs your modern daily behavior. The cabin boy became ill after drinking seawater, and he appeared to be dying in the corner of the boat. Captain Dudley suggested a lottery to determine who should die to save the rest of the starving crew members. One sailor refused the lottery, which appears to highlight the internal conflict between survival and your categorical moral principles. On the 20th day, the situation reached a breaking point, where the biological drive for survival overrode all other considerations. They decided to kill the boy because he was already weak and had no family waiting for him back home. For 4 days, the survivors fed on the body of the boy until a passing ship finally rescued them. They described their rescue as having breakfast when the ship appeared, which appears to be a form of psychological distancing. This specific chain reaction shows how one small compromise can lead to the total liquidation of your moral self-identity. The perfectionist procrastinator often lets their own projects die slowly because they are too afraid to make one messy choice. You are currently starving your own potential by refusing to decide which habits must die for your success to live. Research suggests that avoiding difficult decisions tends to create a downward spiral of increasing anxiety and decreasing cognitive function. Your lack of a firm decision today is secretly eroding your energy levels and the overall quality of your life. Observe how you feel a slight sense of shame when you realize your current reality does not match your potential. This erosion of character often leads to burnout and a complete loss of the ambition that once defined your youth. Staying the same is not a neutral choice, but appears to be a slow and invisible tragedy of a life. You are essentially drinking the salt water of denial, while your true goals are dying right in front of you. We must now examine the psychological signals that prove you are currently falling into this dangerous and invisible trap. Neuroscience suggests that your brain is currently using the same survival mechanisms as the starving men on that lifeboat. You are making micro-decisions every hour that appear to prioritize your comfort over the actual long-term survival of your ambition. The perfectionist procrastinator inside you tends to rationalize your delay by claiming you are waiting for a more moral opportunity. Your amygdala appears to treat the risk of social failure with the same intensity as it treats a physical threat. Every time you retreat into the safety of your current habits, you are essentially sacrificing the person you could become. Notice the slight dryness in your throat right now as you realize how much time you have already wasted today. This internal decay often leads to a systemic collapse, where your energy levels plummet and your creative output simply stops. One major red flag appears to be when you find yourself constantly justifying your lack of progress to those around you. You might believe that you can calculate your way out of this trap by using simple logic and cold willpower. However, willpower appears to be a finite resource that tends to evaporate the moment you face a truly difficult decision. Your inability to choose a direction is currently reflected in the stagnant balance of your bank account and your relationships. You are slowly becoming a stranger to yourself, losing the core values that once gave your life a clear meaning. This creates a painful gap between who you are and who you know you should be in this very moment. Our ancestors who hesitated to take decisive action were often the ones who did not survive the harsh winter seasons. In the digital age, this hesitation is reinforced by the endless stream of distractions that keep your mind in stasis. Pay close attention to the shallow nature of your breathing as we explore the terrifying cost of your continued avoidance. The reckless sprinter tends to confuse motion with progress running in circles, while their actual potential remains completely untouched. This cycle appears to erode your self-confidence until you no longer believe that you are capable of changing your life. The greatest threat you face is not a sudden disaster, but the slow and quiet disappearance of your future self. We must now identify the specific internal red flags that indicate your mind is currently operating in a survival mode. Your first internal red flag is a persistent feeling of moral superiority over people who are actually taking action today. This appears to be a defensive shield used by the perfectionist procrastinator to avoid the risk of being seen failing. The second signal is a chronic state of physical exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to fix for you. Neuroscience suggests that the constant suppression of your true desires consumes more metabolic energy than actually completing your difficult tasks. You may notice that you are increasingly sensitive to the smallest criticisms regarding your current career or your lifestyle choices. This hypervigilance tends to indicate that your self-identity is becoming fragile due to a lack of authentic and decisive movement. To begin the process of habit restructuring, you must first acknowledge the utilitarian reality of your current daily time allocation. Every hour you spend on distraction is an hour you are effectively stealing from the person you promised to become. You can try to re-engineer your environment by removing the digital triggers that currently activate your primitive survival and avoidance loops. Growth mindset research suggests that viewing obstacles as puzzles rather than threats tends to lower the cortisol levels in your brain. The reckless sprinter must learn to value the intrinsic quality of the process rather than just the immediate dopamine of completion. You appear to need a new moral framework that prioritizes the long-term health of your character over short-term social comfort. Start by making one categorical decision that is non-negotiable regardless of the temporary discomfort it may cause in your life. This single act of rebellion against your own comfort zone starts the process of reclaiming your internal sense of authority. Imagine your life as the trolley car where you finally have the courage to turn the wheel toward your true purpose. It may require the sacrifice of one minor part of your identity to save the 5 major goals you hold. This choice feels heavy because it represents a shift from being a passive onlooker to becoming the driver of your destiny. Monitor the sensation of clarity that appears in your mind once you stop lying to yourself about your current progress. Habit formation tends to be a slow and grinding process that requires consistent and intentional growth over many weeks and months. We must now explore how to maintain this momentum when the initial excitement of this realization begins to inevitably fade. Skepticism often acts as a convenient resting place for your reason when the path forward appears too difficult to walk. This mental evasion tends to protect your current identity by suggesting that no perfect answer actually exists for your problems. However, simply resting in doubt can never suffice to overcome the restless and persistent nature of your own human reason. You are currently standing at a threshold where the familiar world has turned strange and can never be quite the same. The perfectionist procrastinator likely feels a strong urge to return to the safety of unquestioned settings and settled belief systems. Notice if your jaw is currently clenched as you contemplate the absolute ruin that follows a life of total inaction. Neuroscience suggests that your brain will attempt to pull you back into the gravitational field of your old and comfortable habits. This resistance appears to be a biological safeguard designed to prevent you from wasting energy on unproven and risky new behaviors. You must learn to monitor your internal red flags, specifically the desire to minimize the importance of your own personal growth. The reckless sprinter often hits a wall when the initial novelty of self-improvement disappears and the real work finally begins. Social pressure tends to act like an invisible hand, pushing you back into the lifeboat of your former and smaller self. Every time you choose social conformity over your true purpose, you are sacrificing the intrinsic quality of your unique human character. This internal conflict creates a deep psychological fatigue that appears to erode your bank account and your overall health today. You may find yourself justifying your stagnation by claiming that the risks of change are far too high for you. This is the hidden cost of inaction, the gradual liquidation of your potential, until there is nothing left to actually save. Take a deep breath and feel the physical space between who you are now and the person you truly desire. Re-engineering your life requires a categorical commitment to the truth. even when that truth appears to be incredibly painful today. Behavioral psychology suggests that your environment currently dictates 80% of the choices you believe you are making with free will. You must become the architect of your own surroundings to prevent the systemic collapse of your discipline and your future. If you fail to act, the story of your life will eventually be written by the very fears you refuse to face. The final choice appears to be between the painful reward of growth and the invisible tragedy of staying exactly the same. Evolution suggests that we must embrace the restlessness of our own reason to escape the gravitational pull of our past today. You are currently holding the pen that will write the final chapter of your own personal and professional success story now. Neuroscience suggests that your brain is capable of rewriting its own neural pathways through consistent and intentional behavioral changes over time. Do not let the perfectionist procrastinator convince you that you need more information before you finally take your first step. The reckless sprinter must realize that the long game is the only game that actually matters for your ultimate fulfillment. Your internal red flags are not obstacles, but appear to be the navigation system guiding you toward your true biological potential. Observe the sensation of empowerment that arises when you finally align your daily actions with your deepest categorical moral values. You can choose to remain an onlooker, or you can finally step into the role of the master of your destiny. The cost of inaction is too high because it represents the total liquidation of your time and your very human soul. This is your red pill moment where the familiar turns strange, and the path towards self-knowledge finally begins for you. Science suggests that your capacity for change is limited only by your willingness to confront the uncomfortable truth of your reality. Every categorical decision you make today appears to strengthen the overall architecture of your future self and your collective happiness. You are no longer just a driver of a trolley car, but the intentional designer of the tracks of your life. Monitor your internal signals and remember that the restless nature of your reason is your greatest asset for total transformation. Transformation is not a single event, but appears to be the slow and grinding result of 1,000 small right choices. You must sacrifice the comfort of your denial to save the 5 most important pillars of your future and your family. This cinematic journey through your own psychology is merely the first step toward reclaiming your internal sense of absolute authority. The story of justice in your life is ultimately about you and the choices you are making in this very second. Your next breakthrough is waiting for you just beyond the threshold of the fear you are finally ready to face today.